So our reading this morning is from Genesis chapter 37. And it is, as I told the children and coach, the narrative of an ugly time in the history of Joseph's family. Jacob settled in the land where his father had lived as an alien, the land of Canaan. This is the story of the family of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers. He was a helper to the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his children, because he was a son of his old age, and he had made him a long robe with sleeves. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." He answered, "Here I am." So he said to him, "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring word back to me." So he sent him to the valley of Hebron. He came to Shechem, and a man found him wandering in the fields. The man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock." The man said, "They have gone away, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from a distance, and before he came near to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we shall say that a wild animal has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he delivered him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but lay no hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand and restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the long robe with sleeves that he wore. And they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, and there was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels carrying gum, balm, and resin, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers agreed. When some Midianite traders passed by, they drew Joseph up, lifting him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they took Joseph to Egypt. May these words be to us our light and our life. Thanks be to God. This is a much better story when it's a musical. It's just somehow more whimsical. But when we read it without the music, without Donny Osmond, it just comes across as something we might read in the paper. A family battle, violence, betrayal. And this week, reading the paper, we see more family violence. We see more violence on an international level, a national level. And a lot of it, especially this week, if you noticed, seemed to be centered around religion. We weren't just talking about war in a generic sense. We were talking about religious factions fighting each other in the name of God, which is especially troubling for me and probably for you as people of faith. How do we talk to the people in our lives who are skeptical about why we gather and come to us with, well, I don't go to church, religion is the source of war. And if you haven't gotten that, trust me, pastors get it. And I found a really good resource that addresses that question. It is a book called For God's Sake, and in full disclosure, I only read an excerpt found in the Guardian newspaper, and the question was put to an atheist, it was put to a Jew, to a Christian, to a Muslim. Is religion the cause of violence in this world? And the answer was, well, of course. Of course. To deny it would be to ignore the people who articulate that we are doing this or that in the name of God. But all of them are quick to point out that's just one overlay, one possible overlay that we can put on violence in this world. And as one of them said, it usually comes when people are losing some other major identity. They will, so a political identity, when there's a split in a country, they will then start using religion as an excuse. And the problem with using religion as the scapegoat for all violence is this. One, usually it is a distorted form of every religion. If you look at the true teaching of the religions that are caught up in war, at the core of them is the same message at the core of ours: love, peace. They're being distorted, they're being used. A little bit more sobering for us in this congregation, and I commend an article to you in this weekend's Star Tribune, is that when reacting to war, the progressive church can get in the rut of demonizing the sons and daughters that serve in the armed forces. We can turn them into things with no ability for moral reflection. We just make them part of the problem. We exercise a prejudice that we claim we seek to eradicate. God, give us the wisdom to use rhetoric sparingly in trying to understand the cause of violence in this world. The problem also with finding blame, like I said a couple weeks ago, the brain craves certainty. And so we're a blame-crazed culture. We love to blame somebody. It gives us certainty. We know who the bad person is, right? And then we eradicate them. And then we have peace on earth. Despite 2 million years of evidence to the contrary. George, is it 2 million years of the human race? Yes, 2 million years of the human race. Despite 2 million years. And in that time, sure, religion has been name-checked. But how about the wars? How about the dictatorships that are founded on political ideology, intellectual ideology? How about the wars that have nothing to do with religion? In countries that oppress people where there is no religion permitted whatsoever. The vacuum filled by religion, if we were to ever get rid of religion, in an effort to bring peace to this world would be filled by politics. It would be filled by philosophy. It would be filled by some of the baser instincts. In a world where resources are poorly distributed and people are prone to seek power, war, violence is inevitable. One of the quotes given by the people interviewed was, "Religion and irreligion are cultural variables. Violence is the constant." Jiddu Krishnamurti was a philosopher who had no time whatsoever for religion or politics or even his own philosophy. On his deathbed, he made sure everybody knew that nobody should remember what he taught, and certainly they should not repeat what he taught. But he said that really at the base of our propensity for violence in this world is the fact that we live in a world that presents us with pain. That's the cost of life. There's going to be pain. There's going to be sorrow. And we're uncomfortable with that. Jesus said, while you're alive, your troubles will be many. He also said, but I came to bring the abundant life. But while you're alive, your troubles will be many. And Krishnamurti placed at the foot of all the violence, he said, we see the world as problematic, all right, because we can't abide pain. We see the world as a series of problems that must be solved, and that's where the real problems set in. Now, I'm not being pro-pain here. I'm not advocating pain is good. In fact, I've already taken aspirin for a headache. I anticipate getting 2 days from now. I have a low pain threshold. I went to the dentist on Thursday, and the dentist said, I've got to do some poking around in your teeth there, and if you're sensitive at all, I said, say no more. Gas me, wake me up when it's over. And I anticipated a nice nap and waking up and everything being all right. Instead, she went into her tray and she pulled out a syringe. And the needle was the size of a Cornish game hen. All right? Needles. And I thought, what, am I 12? Is this Novocaine? Give me the real stuff. And as soon as I said that, thwap, thwap, 2 of them right in my gums. 2 shots right in my gums. Who puts a needle in another person's mouth? Are we savages? It hurt. And the thing is, you know, the plus side of having a shot right in your gums, and right where there's not a lot of meat, so it's going right into nerve, is, yeah, you don't feel anything else because your gums are on fire. Your face hurts. She could have done open heart surgery and I would have been like, gums. So please, no, I am anti-pain, all right? That's my disclaimer. So Krishnamurti, back to Krishnamurti, he says that the mind seeks resolution of pain and will do so in the name of God, in the name of country, in the name of a noble pursuit, in the name of social reform, in the name of power and position. And what that does is it divides us into factions. Right? If I have the power, you don't. If my country is greater than yours isn't as great as mine. If my politics are more impressive than yours, then yours stink. If I'm more moral than you, then you're immoral. The problem is the mind, in its effort to seek certainty, to find blame, to find certainty, to eradicate fear, forgets that the entire world is an interdependent system. We are entirely dependent on each other. And to forget that is dangerous. His solution is a bit unorthodox. And I don't know how possible it is. But it's one worth considering. He said that the point or the effort to make is to eradicate fear. But that must be done on an individual basis. It's a lot slower than we want. We want to storm the bases in the name of good or evil. But 2 million years, folks, it's not going to happen overnight. And it'll probably never happen. While we're alive, our troubles will be many. But somewhere there's an abundant life. And unfortunately, it's one that we have to engage in. So how do we eradicate fear? Not externally. Again, if I don't like Carol, I don't eradicate Carol. I eradicate my fear of Carol. Still working on that. Because focusing on eradicating things, eradicating fear externally, leads to factionalism. Now, in an interdependent society, back to Joseph and his brothers. I think this is a great blessing to us today, this story. Because there is no greater example of an interdependent system than Joseph and his family. All right? When Abraham is your grandfather, chances are you're not engaging in a religious war. Am I correct? Maybe not, but I'm just going to say that would be a bit soon. They needed each other to survive in an economy that was about to go very poorly. Drought was going to threaten the land. It was going to threaten the lives of people. This was a time when they needed wisdom and guidance to make sure that they as a family, they as a community, had the resources to survive a world that was going to go very poorly for them. But look at the family. It's a family governed by fear. It's a family threatened by each other. And I don't want to psychoanalyze them. I don't think that you can psychoanalyze somebody thousands of years previous from an entirely different culture. But if we were to see this family today, I might say to the dad, do you see that in your efforts to honor the memory of Rachel, that perhaps elevating one of your sons to a godlike status might be divisive in your family? And I've told my dad this about my sister. And to no avail. And sure enough, it set Joseph up, didn't it, against his brothers. Joseph had this wonderful gift from God. God chose to enter into this family's lives through a difficult personality, through the gift of dreaming, dreams with meaning. What did Joseph see in this gift? Something that sets him apart from his brothers. He had a dream about that he interpreted as his brothers bowing down to him. And instead of really parsing that out and saying, wow, this is amazing, what is the true meaning of this, what more is God saying, he was like, bang, I just got a message that said, I'm better than you. The brothers here, despite our hard work, despite all we're doing, we've got a brother who is not only telling on us, but he's lording himself over us. Again, in a culture where tribalism can trump an interdependent system like that family. And so Joseph was a threat to them. I want to side with the brothers, but I don't want to side with the brothers because their response to Joseph was violence, division, that prolonged their story, that made their path worse for them. Could they have said, look, we got a brother who is a little hinky. We got to put up with him because God is communicating through him. Even if he's kind of cutting off the message, we will try and see what God is saying through him. Instead, what happened was beginning of a cycle of violence that we see throughout the Old Testament. God sends a message, we don't listen. We get in trouble. God bails us out. God sends us a message, we don't listen, we get in trouble. And do you know when that stopped? Not at the end of Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, when the family is reunited with a very good song. It's not resolved. Now, I had a pastor who, my first pastor who oversaw my first attempts at preaching, and he was a dour human being, all right? So you need to know that. And his solution to everything was, the world will be okay if you vote according to me, all right? But even he came up to me after a sermon, and he said, geez, Tom, remember, it's called the good news of Jesus Christ. All right? So when you're getting that from somebody who's a little dark, it does remind you to look, what do we get in a message where realistically we're going to live in this cycle for the rest of our lives, for the rest of the world? I'm not saying give up. I'm not a fatalist. I'm not a nihilist. I'm not right-handed. I'm just looking at history, and I'm looking at what it is that is the good news, in spite of our tendencies towards division, towards factionalism. So as people of faith, here's our good news. Jesus came to show us how it's done in human form. Perhaps people didn't get it when it was coming from God. Maybe they needed to see Jesus. A central message of love. A central message of peace. The capacity to take this dominant narrative of war and violence, to shrink it, to raise up the moments that are good in this world, those moments where things really do work, so that even though we can't control the world as a whole, we can see this world does have hope. And our lives have a role in that hope. That is God's Holy Spirit, I believe, at work in us. And so, as I said at the top of this sermon, God, grant us the wisdom in how we process what's happening. God, grant us the wisdom in the rhetoric we use in discussing what's going on. God, take the finger of blame and remove it from us. Help us to see the interdependency in this world, to stop claiming a higher moral ground, and to make what little change we can in our short time in this world. Amen.